So thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's event on climate adaptation bonds for agriculture resilience. I would like to start by thanking you for all joining us. This session is part of our broader work under the Agricultural Public Development Bank platform, a coalition led by both IFAD and in collaboration with the French Development Agency, AFD, under both the Finance in Common initiative and UN Food System. We would like to express our deep gratitude to the European Commission for the support. As part of the ILSA program, the European Commission is supporting the Agri-PDB platform activities, especially in SCP countries. The Agri-PDB platform continues to grow. We are now connecting 141 public development banks globally. Our mission is to increase the quality and volume of green finance for sustainable agriculture and to foster the exchange of best practices among these institutions. This event builds on that work focused on climate adaptation bonds in collaboration with UNEP Finance Initiative and the Adaptation and Resilience Investors Collaborative ARIC partnership. We are fortunate to have two esteemed speakers joining us today. First, we will hear Mr. Alexander Wiese from the UNEP Finance Initiative, who will shed light on how climate adaptation bonds can be leveraged to address the urgent financing needs for agriculture. And following Alexander, Mr. Eric Rodriguez will provide insights from the bank FIDA and the Mexico's experience regarding what steps are taken prior to bond issuance, as well as what types of reforms should be considered. Today's discussion represents a vital opportunity for us to learn from each other and to explore how we as public development banks can apply these tools to meet the challenges of climate change. I encourage everyone to engage fully, to ask questions, to use the chat, to share, to intervene, to raise your hands, and to share your perspectives. So the chat is yours. We will have a moment of discussion for a discussion at the end of this meeting. Thank you again for being here, and I will now give the floor to Paul Smith, and I thank him for this collaboration that represents another step forward in our journey towards a more resilient and sustainable agricultural sector, and it's the first collaboration between our two coalitions. So, Paul Smith, please.
Yeah, many thanks, Thierry, and I'm really honored to be joining you today on the Agri-PDB platform, because this really aligns very well with a lot of what we do at UNEP Finance Initiative. So perhaps just to introduce myself, my name is Paul Smith. I am on the climate team at UNEP FI and lead on our adaptation and physical climate risk work. UNEP FI, for those of you who don't know, seems to be a bit of background noise. Could we all mute? Thanks. Yeah, UNEP FI is a collaboration between the UN and the global private finance sector. We are a membership-based initiative, so we have getting on for 400 commercial banks worldwide that are members of UNEP FI, as well as around 150 insurance firms, and around 150 supporting institutions as well, such as central banks, regulators, academic institutions, and industry groups. Our adaptation work really kicked off in 2019, which was a global year for adaptation with the launch of the Global Commission on Adaptation. But we've seen, particularly over the past 3 years, interest really spike from the private finance sector in adaptation resilience. And we're supporting both our banks on adaptation and resilience, and we launched target setting guidance at the end of last year. And the insurance sector, but particularly in the V20 countries through a sustainable insurance facility, to also look at how they can support adaptation and bridge the insurance protection gap, particularly in emerging markets and developing economies. But something I really want to speak to you about today is our collaboration with public finance. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to quickly share just one slide to give you an overview of our project. If that's okay, Mohammed, I'll try this. If you can all see that.
Yes.
So thanks very much, Thierry. So we have a project where we're collaborating with public financial institutions, particularly bilateral development finance institutions. And the idea is for that to be a global project. Right now, we are partnering with mostly European and North American DFIs, as well as the Global Center on Adaptation and the Global Innovation Fund. But the reason we are here today is that we'd be really excited if we could find greater engagement from, from across emerging markets and developing economies. And what this project does, it's called the Adaptation Resilience Investors Collaborative, is that we're working across 3 work streams. One is around fiscal climate risk, and that is helping development finance institutions, potentially PDBs and their investee companies to conduct physical climate risk assessment, but also with a view to identifying and originating projects. We then have a work stream looking at impact management and measurement, and we released a guidance in April of this year to showcase our A&R impact methodology. And early next year, we'll be extending that from direct financing, which is the current report, to also intermediated financing. So how can you support banks and funds in measuring their impact on adaptation and resilience outcomes? And then finally, we have a work stream looking at capital mobilization and how we can integrate those learnings from the fiscal risk work stream and the impacts management work stream to develop a platform for mobilizing capital for adaptation and resilience. And this is really where first major speaker today, that's my colleague, Alexander Sasha Visa, is leading the work on the workstream 3 for capital mobilization. This is our whole team. So I'm leading the secretariat. We have Gary Power looking at fiscal risk, Sasha, who is here today, on capital mobilization, and then Craig and Noah on impacts management and measurement. So that's really what I wanted to highlight. I'd really welcome, if you have any inquiries about this project, please do let me know. We have an option for potential members to test run the work that we do and join some of our webinars for 3 months. So please do let me know if you're interested in joining and seeing what we're all about. But that's enough from me. I'll let us get on with the main points of today's discussion on bonds and adaptation resilience. Over to you, Thierry.
Up to you, Sasha. Please, you.
Thank you very much. And a warm welcome from my side as well. So my topic today in the climate adaptation bond space will be about project selection and evaluation, which is quite a tricky process for most of the public development banks I've been working with. And just a short introduction to myself. I spent myself nearly 20 years in investment banking, structuring any kind of financial products. I've been involved in all kind of SDG, blue, green, orange bond structuring across the globe. And I've been doing the whole structuring process from pre-issuance, issuance to post-issuance. Just a short introduction. So now to the topic, what are adaptation bonds? So if you look, and this is the viewpoint from ICMA, and there are a few other organizations providing guidance on thematic bonds. Then ICMA has differentiates between green bond principles and social bond principles, and whatever is in between are called sustainability bonds, and adaptation bonds are part of the green bond principles, and this is where they fit in because they're part of the green projects. If the adaptation bonds would involve some sort of social aspects or financing social related products related to adaptation, then they will be moved into sustainability adaptation bonds. So now, why do we speak about thematic bonds and adaptation bonds? Thematic bonds have been on the rise over the last decade, and if you look here until COVID-19, there was a strong increase, like nearly doubling every year. There was a bummer during COVID, and which damaged a bit the market, but now, after this bump here, we are again on the increasing trajectory, and we expect this year that we will be beyond 1 trillion. So within the whole green and climate related finance, what we see is that there's not enough money, nearly not enough money flowing into adaptation, and there are a few reasons for that. So number one is that mitigation is easier to define and to measure and to evaluate, and adaptation is more tricky, but adaptation is as important as mitigation in order to reach net zero and to fight against climate change. So that's like the main reason why we look into adaptation bonds. So from a financing perspective, and here I have the example is more on the governmental stake on the sovereign bond side, but from a PDB perspective, the process will be similar. Number one is engaging the right stakeholders within the organization or within the government, and having the right professionals and the right specialists within the organizations understanding the projects which should be financed through the bond. And these bonds are use of proceeds bonds, which means that the money which is collected through bond is flowing into the predefined projects, which are predefined by eligibility categories. So once we have the right stakeholders, we go into the next step, and this is where we establish a bond framework. Within the thematic bond or use of process bond area, the bond framework is kind of a central document within the bond framework, and the bond framework is on the macro level, if you want. We define eligibility criteria or eligibility categories and the respective eligibility criteria. And we will come to this later in the presentation, but this is quite important. So the process is on macro level, you define the bond framework, and once you issue the bond, you will have a prospectus where you go on the micro level and define the projects you would like to finance. This is quite process driven issuance process, which makes it, once you understand the process and once you're familiar with the process, makes it easy to replicate. And the next step is the identification of eligible budget items, and this is where we align the budget items with ICMA's principles and guidance. So there are certain guidance, there are certain principles which needs to be incorporated, like the few points. And once this is done, there's an independent review, and the independent review is important because in the past, like in the history, there were bond frameworks which were weakly aligned with the principles, and then from the investor side, there was a strong strong view that an external review provider should be looking into alignment of the bond framework with the different principles of guidance. So once we have the external review, we can issue the bond. And usually 1 year after the bond issuance, there's an allocation impact reporting. So on the allocation side, any funds are recorded and where they're allocated to on the project level. And on the impact reporting side, we have the impacts which are achieved. And usually they are correlated to the SDGs, which makes it easier, like on a global level, to compare to each other. And once you've done the first bond, issuing new bonds is a piece of cake. So it's relatively easy because you establish the process, you have everything in place, you've done once, and then you can repeat again and again. The advantage of issuing a thematic bond is that you, in most cases, you receive a greenium. So thematic bonds are especially in emerging markets, cheaper for the issuing entity than traditional bonds. That's like the big advantage. And another one is the marketing aspect. So what are the challenges for project selection and evaluation, especially in case of adaptation and resilience? So number one, adaptation and resilience is under-researched. So because it as of now, there has been little focus on adaptation and resilience, it's difficult to define the right eligibility categories. Number two, because it's under research, there are difficulties to measure the impacts and the risks, especially in relation to agriculture. There are difficulties to select the right sustainability performance indicators and key performance indicators and sustainability performance targets, which are important in order to provide an allocation impact reporting. And like climate like adaptation is less predictable through the models. And I'm doing a project in Mongolia, for example, where we're trying for the banking sector, for the public and private banking sector, to run the simulations. And it's not that easy because there's not enough data to do the simulations. And then one big problem is aligning small-scale projects with broader climate bond standards and investor appetite. How do we approach these challenges? So number one, and this is the most important point, there needs to be responsibility within the bank, and the responsibility needs to happen on two levels. One is on board level, so on high level, there needs to be responsibility that this bond should be issued. Number two, on technical level, and this is quite crucial, that there's one person who is responsible and focal point during the whole process. Number two, and this is what proved to be successful in other countries and where I've been involved, is having advisors in place who can guide you through the process. And this is where you can get help, for example, from the Agri-PDB platform and other multilateral organizations in this respect. Alignment with local and global standards. And one crucial process, and this is number D here, is to have clear process. Issuing a bond is a step-by-step process. There's no left, there's no right. If you define a clear process, and this is probably the German side speaking out of me, if you have clear defined process which you follow, then you can successfully and efficiently issue the bond. So on the project selection and evaluation side specifically, there are a few, like the process is built in a way that we have certain filters. Number one is the exclusion filter, and the exclusion filter excludes all the different projects which are harmful for climate. So we predefine in the beginning exclusion criteria. So we will not finance fossil fuel company, or we will not finance fertilizer company. And this is like runs through this exclusion filter. Once this is done, then the climate filter, especially for adaptation bonds, the climate filter is applied to the remaining portfolio. Once the climate filter is and once we select the different climate related projects, we go one level deeper and then select the adaptation projects only. After the selection of adaptation projects, we will have a financial filter to select the projects which promise the highest return in order to be able to repay the bond at the end. So on the selection itself, and this is where specialized companies can bring you a lot of additional value and help you. Number one is assess the eligibility and assessment of the eligibility and error solutions, and we will come to the different aspects within adaptation and within the resilience in the agriculture space. So we look into projects and we look into products and services which reduce risks, climate risks, which address systematic barriers, which improve adaptation measures being implemented in especially in the agriculture space. Then, as we mentioned before, there's this exclusion criteria, do not harm in the ARIC solution. And here we evaluate, okay, if the project helps on the one side to improve adaptation, it cannot harm on the other side certain climate related issues. And then the last one is the measurement of ANR impacts results, which is after the issuance of the bond. So the checklist to guide, and this is what we've done. This is what we've done on for venture capital and private investors, but this is applicable for PRBs and the private sector banks and other organizations. So we identify and assess the company's projects and solutions. For ANR, we have a checklist, and this is the filter where we specifically filter out for adaptation and resilience. We quantify the proportion, like how much is dedicated to adaptation, how much is dedicated to potentially to mitigation, and how much is dedicated potentially to loss and damage. And we pre-select the ones which are dedicated to adaptation. And through the checklist and through a selection form, we can pre-select the right projects. And within the next step, and this is something we need to quantify, which is quite an important exercise. So some solutions can potentially contribute 75% to adaptation and 25% to mitigation. And on our side, we need to define this clear filter. And I think 2/3 to 1/3 is a good rough number in order to say, okay, at least 2/3 of the investment should go into adaptation projects. And quantification of this of this use of proceeds is quite important. The next one is the internal screening. So we evaluate each of the solutions. We ensure that it's aligned with our internal investment strategy, but with the bond framework itself as well. So there's like a filtering form in order to do it on the data we gathered in the previous step. Then we have to do proper due diligence on the projects. So this is investors into adaptation bonds will ask about the due diligence process and how the projects were selected and aligned to eligibility criteria. And here it is recommended to have a multi-stakeholder selection committee within the organization. So we have it's headed by, let's say, in quite a lot of cases, it's headed by the CEO, but then like within the committee, we have the treasury, the head of the treasury department. We have probably the heads of the different parts within the bank, in order to evaluate the solutions and to make them reasonable. So the selection committee, just remember it. The composition of the selection committee is quite an important point of the whole selection process. So once we define our portfolio, we need to prepare for the future allocation impact reporting, and this is where we assess the expected A&R impacts within our pre-selected portfolio. What is the impact? And like these are the 5 aspects of impact investing. So what impacts does the project provide? To whom? Who are the stakeholders? How much? What's the contribution? And what are the associated risks? And then there's an investment decision, and this is where the filter on financial return comes in place. So if you have like a broader portfolio, which is bigger than what you want to rise as an investment, then you should select on financial criteria as well in the remaining portfolio. Once this is done, and be pre-selected and be ready for the issuance, in parallel we can already start to look into allocation impact reporting, to start integrating area impact, adaptation resilience impact metrics, to see how we report, how do we collect the data, what's our DSG plan, how do we align with the DSG plan, and so on and so on. Once this is done, and this is something I would like to mention. So within the adaptation universe, we have several key sectors. Today we will focus on agriculture and food systems, but there are other sectors which could be looked into and taken into account. So within the adaptation resilience, these are some examples for you to better understand how you should be looking into adaptation resilient solutions and how you should be defining the eligibility categories. So I have 5 different eligibility categories, but there are more out there. So it's recommended to research current papers, especially like the TNFD has quite many research on adaptation resilience in agriculture sector. Climate Bond Initiative has quite an extensive database of different agriculture related solutions and KPIs and SPTs. Same for ICMA. So, and these databases are always evolving, so it's always recommended to look properly into the different sources once you issue the bond. So what I have here, for example, drought resistant crop variants, which help reduce decline in yields, quality and quantity. Then we have water efficiency. Then we have weather, like as the next one, better forecasting analytics. So you can invest into data and data-driven projects in order to forecast the impacts and the impacts of climate extreme weather events. There's a new upcoming field which is AI-based and AI-powered monitoring and forecasting. Then we can look into efficiency and all kind of climate insurance and de-risking mechanisms should or could be financed through this report. So on the adaptation, on the ARIC side, where I'm leading the capital mobilization.
Last minute, Alexander.
Just 2 minutes and I'm done, Thierry. I know I'm over the time. It's just 2 minutes and then we open for questions. So just to mention that we are working on an investment framework, which will make the whole exercise much more easier. We will have the eligibility categories, and then we will have the minimum investment criteria. And this will be a consultative process where we will be coming up with a framework in order to make this easier for the issuer to issue a bond. I'm done. Thank you very much for listening. I'm open for questions. And if at some point in time you realize that one question wasn't answered, you can always shoot me an email and I will try to answer as comprehensive as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sasha, for your availability and for this very detailed presentation. Before the question, we will give the floor to Fila and to Rick for also a very interesting experience of a PDB who has a long history with bond issuance. Rick, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to put my presentation up. Just meanwhile, I want to thank you for the opportunity of presenting our story of how we issued this first climate adaptation bond. And hopefully, I'm going to be able to illustrate the points that Alexander has just made in his presentation. So happy to answer all of the questions that you may have at the end of the presentation as well. So just to confirm, you can see my screen now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes,
Thank you.
Eric. Yes.
Great. Thank you. So just a little bit of background. We are a development institution with analogous functions to a development bank. We were created back in the 50s by the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of Mexico. And we are devoted to support the agri-food sector. All of the activities related to this sector are in our scope. And also all of the non-traditional activities, by non-traditional understanding other than agriculture, in cities or places with less than 50,000 inhabitants. So basically, it's quite a diverse base, even though it's focused primarily on agriculture, but has a wide range of activities we can finance. We are basically formed by four different trust funds, but we are all bundled together by this entity, which is FIRA. And we just finance the whole value chain from primary production, going through commercialization, industrialization, and also services around it. We're a second-tier development bank, which means that we rely on our financial intermediaries to deliver our products. And this is something very important that I would like you to keep in mind, because this basically poses an additional challenge for us in order to be able to select the proper projects that would be labeled later on as adaptation. So I would rather say that from the first year, it would be a little bit easier, but even though it is possible, I think the message from this presentation that I want you to keep is that it is quite possible, even though that at the moment, if you are not doing it, it seems like a lot of steps you have to do, but it's quite possible just going step by step, as Alexander just mentioned. So basically, we go to this second-tier financial model, and we offer basically funding and warranties to our producers, entrepreneurs, suppliers, and so on and so forth. And also, we have a little bit of technical support. This is not quite a big fund, and this one we go directly to the producers. So we don't go through this second-tier scheme. Also, and just to try to introduce to the topic on why we are doing this, and basically we have just defined in our priority objectives, 1/3 of our priority objectives is devoted entirely to promote and to contribute to the development of a responsible and sustainable agricultural, forestry, and fishing sector. This is quite relevant for us because it just sets the scenario for us, for all of our actions to be able to incorporate it to our main strategies. Also, just to briefly mention it, also, or our other two objectives are quite related to sustainability, I would say, which would be financial inclusion and also productivity and efficiency. So this is kind of our rationale, a little bit of a rationale for issuing these kind of bonds. Yes. So maybe this is one of the graphs that we have all seen, all of the hockey stick graphs that are quite usual to see what's happening with climate change. And basically the main message from this, and exactly what we have just taken from this, is that basically no matter what we're going to do, climate change is here, and we need to adapt to the consequences of it. IPCC just determines that it's basically man-made, and basically that the small producers are the ones that are less prepared to confront the consequences of climate change. And these consequences mainly, well, talking about agriculture, mainly has to do with altering the crop yields, basically in a negative way, due to a reduction in precipitation and increase in temperatures. So this is not a minor effect, and maybe it's one that we have many times just forgotten to mention in the speech, because a decrease in the productivity yields of agriculture means an increase in the price of the food, and also the scarcity of food. And this is one of a huge impact that maybe is not as spectacular as a sea level of as the rise of the sea levels, for example, or increase in hurricanes on some other extreme event, but it's one that can impact our way of living in a great way. So basically, just focusing on Mexico, which is obviously the territory we are working in, we can see that it is expected that in Mexico, the effects of climate change are going to be, or expected to be, greater even than the global average. We are going to have an increase in the sea level, ocean acidification, heat waves, extreme weather events, reduced precipitation, droughts, wildfires, basically the whole package. And we're very, very, very exposed to these. So fortunately, we have this instrument of public policy, which is the National Atlas of Vulnerability to Climate Change, which is actually what you are watching on your screen right now. And basically what it does is that it identifies which municipalities, which is kind of like the locations in Mexico that could be more vulnerable to climate change. And this is very, very useful for us, because then it just gives us the sense of where we should be intervening with our credits in order to target climate change and climate change adaptation and resilience. So basically what this atlas does is a tool that analyzes specific climate-related problems and aims to show the differential vulnerability of the territory considering current conditions and future scenarios. So this kind of gives you the idea that, well, more of half of the country is exposed to climate change, but also to which kind of climate change consequence we are dealing. And so we have like the geographical aspect of how we should or where we should direct our resources. But then after we know the geographical dimension of this, on where is the main geography that we need to point, is what we should do. And we have just created this taxonomy, this Aronberry taxonomy of FIRA, that basically identifies 89 what we call investment concepts, which it's basically type of projects of this, which projects could be beneficial for intervening in these geographical locations. And basically, when we combine these two, meaning that these 89 investment concepts, when applied to these geographical locations that we just saw in the previous map, then we have found like how we can select the projects that would be basically promoting or enhancing the adaptation and resilience of against climate change in our portfolio. And this is quite a big part. As we have seen with Alexander, this is kind of like a use of proceed bond. So this is one of the key questions that we have to that we had to answer in order to be able to issue the green bond in adaptation. Also, it is worth to mention that we have built this with assistance from several international financial organizations as AFD and also GGI that have helped us to develop this taxonomy. And also, this way of selecting projects is in line with the Sustainable Taxonomy of Mexico. That is an instrument from public policy that has just been created earlier this year.
2 minutes left, Eric.
Thank you. Perfect. I'm close to the end right now. So basically, I want to show you now the result. In the last 6 years, we have issued 10 thematic bonds for a total amount of around $1,400 million. And basically, well, the one that we issued on the previous year is the one that we have directed towards climate resilience and adaptation. It was around or was issued for around $152 million. And well, this is kind of part of our portfolio of thematic issuances that we have actually been doing. We also, besides green bonds, which is the one that we have issued the most, we have also issued gender bonds and social bonds. So this is part of a bigger, I would say, strategy for thematic emissions, for thematic issuances. And this is how our framework for thematic issuances looks like. In the dotted line in green, you can see the green and adaptation and climate resilience categories and the subcategories in which we divide it. So I'm just quickly bring your attention to the subcategories related to adaptation and resilience, which we have divided in absorption to the extreme climate events and adaptation to extreme climatic events. Just basically to have some way of differentiate the different types of projects. And finally, let me show you briefly the results we have had with this. Right now, we have issued our first year report, and we are happy to announce that we have allocated 100% of the use of proceeds, and these are the final results. We have financed a total of 276 projects for the total amount of the issuance, and we have 2,285 beneficiaries, final beneficiaries of this credit. So as you can see, the issuance of FIRA is very much defined by bundling together a lot of different projects that benefits a lot of people at the end. So this is one additional challenge in our sector, because we try to target, well, what we can call rather small projects and bundle it together instead of having just like one super project. And this also poses some other challenges, but we are happy with the results. We have basically, well, almost covered all of the Mexican territory, and most of our resources were devoted to projects that are based on reducing disasters, and adaptation based on reduction of disasters. So thank you very much, and I hope this has been a good picture for you to try to understand what we have done with climate change adaptation. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Eric. It was also very interesting. Thanks you for highlighting the importance of the taxonomy, and it was also complementary to Alexander's presentation. So many thanks. We can open the floor to the discussion if you want. Maybe I see that there are some questions already in the chat. Maybe I could give the floor to Pius, who raised a question in the chat. Pius from Mike Malawi.
All right, thank you. So my question really was going towards Alexander's presentation, where he was saying that there's a need to engage a few stakeholders or a number of stakeholders in the early stages of bond issuance, and one of the stakeholders that were engaging really is the government. Now I'm looking at it from the private sector perspective, where some of the private sector players want to actually issue bonds, but because there's this requirement for government or as a stakeholder to be engaged. Bureaucracies within the government itself do affect progress, and therefore there's been frustration on the private sector to actually go ahead with such projects. And secondly, in some cases, there's need for capacity building within the government to make sure that those that you are engaging actually do understand the matters that you're discussing. And in most cases, this has been a challenge. There's a knowledge gap within the government itself, and therefore most of these programs have been frustrated. What do you say? What has been your experience around that?
So from my personal experience, what I've seen so far is that the sovereign level, the governments have been leading the way. So let's take Uzbekistan as a case. They've been the first one, like on sovereign level, to issue an SDG bond or thematic bond, and then the private sector followed the lead of the government to issue the similar instrument in the local and in the international markets. So I would see the role of the respective government, number one, being a front runner, number two, putting the right regulatory frameworks in place to support thematic bonds. In some countries, if you issue a green bond or a thematic bond, you have certain tax benefits as an issuer and or as an investor. So that's the level of the government involvement. I've seen in other countries where there's no sovereign bond issuance that the private sector is trying to do, like to pave the way to issue a thematic bond. It's more difficult, but it's possible. So there's more work involved to find the right market to issue into. So you can issue domestically or you can issue internationally in order. But like this is part of the process and the strategy, I would say.
Eric, would you have a comment also on this question according to your experience?
Thank you. Yes, well, I think Alexander has pretty much covered it. But yes, I'm sorry, I just turned my camera on. I'm babysitting my daughter right now, so I'm gonna close my camera just to say hi. But yeah, I mean, basically, well, I mean, engagement with all the relevant actors. I mean, I would say not only government or private sector is quite key into this, because basically there's no way in which we can work on this issue without cooperating with some others that are either having some additional steps towards climate change adaptation. So in that sense, the idea is like how can we increase and how we can add up to those incremental efforts. And for those that are still not probably doing much in this aspect, the main role would be to involve and to try to make them a specific role and facilitate how they can insert into this climate change and adaptation activities. So basically, that's part of the strategy we have been doing with the green bonds missions that try to involve all the investors and try to direct in their funds towards more. Sorry, there's some interference in the back. Thank you. So basically, yes, just try to involve all of the investment, all the investment, all the investors into this kind of instruments is quite good. So to help them engage, and also, I think this is a great instrument from our experience on how to engage these investors. Since from the last 6 years that we have starting with this thematic issuances, we have, well, basically just periodical checkups from, well, mainly pension funds, which are our main clients investing into these instruments. And it's amazing because now they check up on our strategy, on our sustainability strategy results periodically. And it's great to have these conversations with them and to have them engaged into what we're doing.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Do not hesitate to raise your hand.
Yes,
Mohamed Ali,
another
yes.
question. Yeah, from our dear colleague Christian. I don't know if he would like to speak, or I can say the question. At the country level, which entity is or should be in charge to promote green bonds? Is it Central Bank who have a role to play? Over.
Yes, thank you, Mohamed Ali. Just to add that, thank you very much for the answer of Alexander. But my question was mainly to know if, for example, central banks have a specific mandate, political one, economical one, to incitate or to support the public development banks which are financing agriculture and rural development to work on that direction or not?
The short answer, yes. The long answer is so I'm actually working on another project with the Bank of Mongolia, which is the central bank in Mongolia, and they are actively promoting green investments. They're actively moving from traditional finance to more thematic, to more in their case, it's more like about livestock and rather than pure agriculture, but they're actively promoting. And I think central banks have a huge role to play in order to put the right incentives, like taxonomies, to put the right incentives on climate risk analysis and reporting, in order to make this kind of solutions more mainstream within the country. Like 100% agree that the central banks should be in the lead.
If I might add to that, I think it's a great question, because, I mean, these kind of instruments, thematic issuances, are ones that can promote also, when well-directed and with the proper and aligned incentives, can promote financial stability. I think that's one of the great one of the great objectives that all central banks have right now. So we are lucky enough to have in Mexico, our central bank is very supportive. I have been working with this for many years now, so in promoting this financial stability through basically sustainability. So I would totally say that they have a big role into this.
Many thanks for your answers.
Thank you. The bank from Tanzania, Awabai, can you present yourself? And I think that you wanted to raise a question.
Yes, thank you very much to all the presenters. I have a question to Alexander. So Tanzania Agriculture Development Bank has been thinking, of course, we are a state-owned, 100% state-owned agriculture institution. And basically, when we were thinking of, how we can consider issuing a climate adaptation bond. So the question was, currently in the country, we are meant to be providing our loans at a single interest rate at a single digit. So we're basically providing loans at probably 9, 8, highest is 10%. And so the question has been, what is the market like, and in terms of our investors as well, whereby we're able to get bonds that are relatively priced at a reasonable price, I guess, that can then enable the bank to still provide loans that would relatively be at a lower rate, because that is the nature of our clients. That is who we want to be impacting the most. These are beneficiaries who can't really do much if we're imposing high interest rates. So maybe just to get your experience and how that kind of it informs how we put this set up and who we are involving as stakeholders, and really the effort that we can put in ensuring that there will be a market and there will be investors that can go for the lower interest rates. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we could give the floor also to Ketumile Direng from the National Bank in Botswana, and then you will try to answer to both questions. Please, Ketumile. I don't know if I pronounce your name correctly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. No, you pronounced it very, very well. I have two questions. The first question is basically to do with the current market barriers for financial institutions to access the climate finance or climate funding space. This is particularly to processes such as accreditation to stakeholder bodies such as Global Climate Fund and so on and so forth. You find that there's a lot of red tape, and for those institutions to access those markets, the accreditation process is usually very, very cumbersome. We understand that usually.
We don't hear you anymore. So while Mr. Ketumile is connecting again, maybe you can answer the first answer from the Bank of Tanzania.
Yes, this is a really interesting question. So from a strategic point of view, what I would recommend and what I would do is to have a no product roadshow first. So before you even like develop the product, you reach out to certain investors and you ask the questions and the level of their engagement. Another thing, but this will, and I don't want to complicate the whole thing, what I've seen in Ukraine, which is highly dependent, where I do some work, and which is highly dependent on agriculture, what we're working there is a combination of a use of proceeds bond and a sustainability linked bond. So the way it works, so we use the same like structure of a bond, but then we agree with the investors that if we meet the climate targets, they will reduce the coupon by 2%. Like this is something, like this is an idea we are actively promoting in the country in order to reduce, like to actively and sufficiently combine the climate adaptation efforts and climate mitigation efforts in the country with investors' appetite to support climate-related projects. And you have like the combination of the two main bond worlds on the sustainability side. But you know, speaking to investors is always a good idea, and ask for their opinion in if they would invest, at what price, and how they would promote this kind of product.
All right, thank you very much, Alejandro. I'm sure that if I do link up with you, you'll probably help me, understand how strategically we can go about handling our investors. Thank you so much. I will definitely be in touch.
Thank you.
Ketumile, are you back? Can we hear us now?
I don't know if I'm audible now.
Okay. Yes, please continue. We didn't hear the end of your question.
Okay, the first question that I asked was just basically what kind of I'm trying to shorten it so that I don't get maybe cut because of the network. So I just wanted to find out what currently is in place to try and make the current process that there is for financial institutions that are interested in accessing the green space, usually in fronts like getting affiliated to other bodies such as the Global Climate Fund and so on and so forth. Those accreditation processes are usually very cumbersome, and institutions usually have a long list of requirements that they have to fulfill in order to participate in that space. I just wanted to find out from you what kind of advices you'd have, what kind of anything that you could give to such institutions so that you can assist in them fostering their participation in that space. And then the other two questions, I've written them in the chat box. Thank you.
Okay, to your first question, if you've done a Green Climate Fund accreditation, then issuing a green bond is a piece of cake. This is like walking in the park. This is like, from a complexity level, this will be relatively easy for you. But you know, on a more serious note, these are two different processes. Like accreditation to the Green Climate Fund is quite intense because of the application form and the process itself. Issuing a green bond, once you establish the framework, once you have the right supporters on your side, issuing a green bond, on adaptation bond, is not that difficult, because there is a proper process. You follow the 7 steps. That's it. And you know, and I would like to assure you not to be afraid to enter the process and follow the steps to issue the bond. And there's so much support in the market for entities issuing new green bonds. And the other questions, I will try to find them, but probably you repeat the next one, so it's easier for me to.
The next one was just basically, I think, on the last part that you had mentioned that I wanted to find out what resources and programs are available to educate investors more about adaptation bonds and their potential, and just the green bond market.
Like the adaptation, the ARIC, Adaptation Resilience Investment Collaborative, we are doing that. We are working on adaptation and resilience. We are developing the frameworks, the technical documents, the guidances, and we help our members to understand the process and to be, you know, to be more involved in adaptation and resilience finance. So this is one major source, and this is where you can do a peer-to-peer learning as well, which I think is quite important. And I think like this forum we have today right now, as a peer-to-peer learning platform, is amazing, and this is where you get the most out of it.
Thank you. I see that Mr. Prasong is also online, and Apraka has also an experience in supporting Public Development Bank with the bond emission. Dr. Prasong, would you have a comment also? Maybe left because also the meeting is reaching its end. I will give the floor to Yue for the survey, and then I will do the closing speech unless there are urgent questions. Yue?
Okay, we'd like to say a big thank you to both the speakers for the excellent presentations, and to all the participants for joining us today. And before we wrap up today's session, we'd love to hear from you. My colleagues will share the link of a short satisfaction survey, and we will also send this through email after the event. Yes, it will just take a few minutes, but it plays an important role for our further discussion and activities. And if you have further questions to ask for the speakers, you can also write in the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Yue. So many thanks
I'll
to
give the floor
everybody.
to Kiki.
Thank you, Yue. So it was thanks to everybody. It was a very useful and successful event with more than 80% participants at the 8th of the event. As we bring today's session to a close, I want to extend my sincere thanks to all of you for your valuable participation in this important dialogue, and I hope that we will continue this discussion further. Your engagement demonstrates the commitment of the Agri-PDB platform to advancing climate resilience and sustainable agricultural finance. A special thanks to Mr. Sasha Wiese from ARIC UNEP Finance Initiative and to Eric Rodriguez from FIRA Mexico for their insightful contributions today. Your expertise and experience have given us a clear view on how climate adaptation bonds can be harnessed to drive the much needed investments into resilient agricultural system. Today's discussion have emphasized the urgent need for innovative financial tools that can bridge the funding gap for climate adaptation. And we've seen that these bonds can mobilize both public and private capital. The Agri-PDB platform with its extensive network of 141 PDBs is positioned to lead this charge, ensuring that agriculture remains at the forefront of sustainable development. Our work is far from finished. Looking ahead, the platform has also a coming agenda. We will continue to program events around innovative finance, green bonds, and so on. And I hope that we will continue our collaboration with UNEP Finance Initiative. We will have also a regional working group on guarantees for West and Central Africa. We will organize a webinar on the role of PDBs for financing sustainable food system and thus contributing to a global nutrition agenda. I encourage all of you to remain engaged and to continue contributing to the platform initiative. Thank you again for your time, insights, and dedication. Thank you for all the team of the Agri-PDB platform. So I thank you to you, to Mohamed Ali, and to Alejandro for your moderation and for all your efforts in organizing this event. Please, all participants, do not hesitate to come back to us for further information, for new questions, for new proposals, also for the coming events. Let's carry forward the momentum from today's discussion into our future work with the shared goal of supporting farmers, SMEs, and rural communities in the fight against climate change. I look forward to our continued collaboration and have a wonderful day and see you soon. We will keep you informed of our coming events.